This is what everyone's talking about.
Everything's on the table.
This is what champions come to take. This is what everyone came to see.
And the slam!
No do-overs. No second chances. No more Mr. Nice Guy. This is winner take all. The NBA Finals continue on ABC and the ESPN app.
Faraday presenta Ojos con Alergia y Picazón contra el Jardinero. Y el ganador es Faraday Extra Fuerte. Para aliviar la picazón de los ojos por alergia, actúa más rápido y supera a Claritin y Flonase aún a las 24 horas. Faraday, adelante.
This is the Daily Blast from the New Republic, produced and presented by the DSR Network. I'm your host, Greg Sargent. Donald Trump is desperately trying to salvage the concert series celebrating America's 250th anniversary after a number of celebrities pulled out. He unleashed a weird tirade on Truth Social in which he basically declared, "Don't worry, I'll be there, so it'll be great." But we think this whole saga illustrates something deeper about Trump and MAGA's growing toxicity inside the culture. Indeed, another Trump tirade about all this was strikingly revealing on that front. And this is all becoming apparent to even some MAGA figures who have reacted to all of it in surprising ways. New Republic senior editor Alex Shepard writes really well about Trump, MAGA, and cultural politics, so we're asking him what gives about all this today. Alex, always good to have you on, man.
It's great to be back.
So the organizers of what's being called the Great American State Fair, which is being produced by the Trump-backed group Freedom 250 to be held on the National Mall, recently announced a slate of celebrities and musical acts who are set to attend. But then people started pulling out. The rapper Young MC, Poison's Bret Michaels, country music star Martina McBride, the Commodores, all out. Alex, can you recap what happened here?
Well, I mean, it's a little hard to figure out, but based on the initial announcement and statements from the artists, what it seems like happened is that this group that is organizing the Great American State Fair went to artists and seems to have maybe downplayed the political nature of this sort of pro-Trump rally, essentially, since it sort of has fallen apart after it became apparent what this actually was. Trump has tried to step in and save it with his own star power, essentially.
Well, Trump puts out this tirade on Truth Social in which he suddenly says, "We don't really want singers there." He goes on and he says, "The fabulous Lee Greenwood will introduce me, and the singer Christopher Macchio will sing, plus a few musical groups from the armed forces." And then Trump hits his climax, saying that the event will be attended by, quote, "a fine and highly dignified gentleman known as President Donald J. Trump," close quote. Boy, I don't know, Alex. That doesn't sound like a must-see, does it?
I mean, I think I would still probably rather sit through a Trump rally than watch Vanilla Ice and Milli Vanilli perform, but no, it does not seem very good. You know, I mean, it's a farce, right? Because, I mean, again, how much can a concert featuring Vanilla Ice and Milli Vanilli really celebrate America? But still, the idea here was to have some sort of event befitting of the country's 250th anniversary, birthday, whatever you want to call it. And instead, we're just going to get another Trump rally on the National Mall.
Exactly. I just want to highlight one other thing Trump says here in this tirade. He says this, quote, "We don't want singers with no talent. We've told them all to stay home," close quote. I mean, Alex, that's basically, you're not breaking up with me, I'm breaking up with you, isn't it?
I mean,
your thoughts on that?
I mean, where's the lie, right? Like, I think he's not wrong, but you know, as with many of, you know, him calling out Omarosa or whatever, you're like, you invited them to begin with, right? Like, it's embarrassing for you that you invited them. It's even more embarrassing that they pulled out, and it's even more embarrassing than that you're doing a rally with Lee Greenwood, who, by the way, I had to look this up before, but is even older than Donald Trump. He is at least 3 years older than Trump. and this guy who's like an imitation of Pavarotti. Like it's preposterous. But again, I think it does kind of capture like where we are less than 2 years into the second term.
Well, let's talk about that because you've written really well on it. You've written on the fact that after Trump won in 2024, there was kind of an opening for Trump and MAGA to really make inroads into the culture. It was like there was a little Trump boomlet. There was sort of a passing sense, or at the time, it didn't even feel passing. It felt like scary, durable. At that moment, it felt like Donald Trump has tapped into something that we didn't know is there. And that was a scary feeling for a while there. Can you talk about that atmosphere at the time and what people kind of concluded about it?
Yeah, I mean, it was something that I was writing about and reporting on a fair amount right after Trump won. But I think that there was a sense that for the first time since his movement really started in the summer of 2015, that there was like carte blanche to just love Trump if you wanted to, or to embrace Trump without repercussions. Like there, people have obviously always embraced him, but there's always a sense that doing so would have kind of professional, personal, familial, whatever repercussions you can think of. And I think what we saw like immediately after, I wrote at the time about like where you were just seeing the Trump dance like at every NFL game. You saw it at U.S. men's national soccer games. And it was this sense that like the culture had just kind of said like this is who we are, right? This is part of where we're going. And I think that, I had felt like I missed that. And you saw this too at like, things like there was a UFC fight right after the election, and like Joe Burrow, was like, embracing him, the quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. And it just kind of felt like something that wasn't there before. And it felt alarming because it seemed like there were just inroads, particularly with like whatever we call it the manosphere now, but I think even bigger than that, right? Like NFL, like men's, U.S. men's soccer, these kinds of things. And, even some hip hop music too. And now it's just all gone. It's just none of it's there, right? Like, again, Young MC, Martina McBride, right? Like, that's the best that they could do. Morris Day and the Time, that's the best that they could do to start here. And, when we got to the end of the road, it's not even that.
Yeah, I think another way to put this is that Trump and MAGA had this brief moment and this brief chance at winning the culture that was sort of created by a bunch of fluke conditions. Joe Biden's age, Biden's refusal to get out of the race in time, the post-COVID shock, inflation, and an information environment that was just so deeply screwed up that all these low information voters, young people who were just starting to get into voting and into politics, made their decisions based on TikTok videos mocking Harris and TikTok videos just lying to them about Trump's true agenda. And that was like a weirdly kind of devastating moment. But Trump and MAGA just pissed away the chance that was created for them by this weird confluence of circumstances, I think.
I think there were two other things that I don't think that you mentioned, right? One was the arrest and the mugshot in particular, and then also the assassination attempt and the photograph. And I think that there was a sense of there being a kind of transgressiveness, right? That this was like edgy and it reflected something that was different, right, than Joe Biden, stumbling around, or Kamala Harris's kind of like carefully, focus grouped, campaigning. And, I think that in a lot of ways, right, like I was certainly alarmist about it, and I probably like should have just looked at recent history when I was catastrophizing, because I think what happened is what always happens, right? Which is that one, you realize that this guy is completely incompetent and out of his mind, and he's completely self-obsessed too, right? So you don't get to graft onto him, right? Like it always ends up the other way around. Like he always like destroys anything that sort of like latches onto him, and that ultimately you have no choice but to separate yourself from it, because it's just this all consuming blob essentially that just devours anything that gets close enough to it.
To stay up to date on all the news that you need to know, there's no better place than right here on the DSR network. And there's no better way to enjoy the DSR network than by becoming a member. Members enjoy an ad-free listening experience, access to our Discord community, exclusive content, early episode access, and more. Use code DSR26 for a 25% off discount on sign-up at thedsrnetwork.com. That's code DSR26 at thedsrnetwork.com. Humiliating.com/buy. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Hey, I like your new RAV4.
Thanks, yours too.
What does RAV stand for anyway?
To me, it's the Remarkably Advanced Vehicle.
Really? To me, it's the runway approved vehicle for its amazing style.
What about Remarkably Adaptable Vehicle because of its versatile cargo space?
Or really admired vehicle?
Oh, or Really Awesome Vehicle.
It really is the recreational activity vehicle. The stylish 2026 Toyota RAV4 Limited. What's your RAV4?
I wrote a little song to remind you, Choice Hotels get you more of the experiences you value. The Cambria Hotel's got it all. A rooftop bar, have a ball. Cocktails up here feel just right. Is Cambria amazing? All right. Bring a date, your team, or even your mom. Book direct at choicehotels.com. See you on the roof.
Yeah, and I think there's another thing about this as well that's a little bit darker, which is that, Donald Trump had this chance to really make these types of inroads, but then they decided to hurt the country instead in every conceivable way that they could, right? It's not like all these artists who are pulling out are simply expressing their personal distaste for Trump. It's not like they have Trump derangement syndrome. It's that they have these fan bases that hate Trump and MAGA. And for a reason, right? They hate Trump and MAGA because Trump and MAGA are hurting and fucking over a lot of people and wrecking our country and our common life together, right?
Trump, when he came into office, was riding this wave and he loved it, right? He was finally getting the kind of adulation that he always wanted from the sources that he always wanted, right? Not the dumb hicks that come to, his events, like from the actual culture. And he could have continued to get that if he had tried to govern like a normal president. And again, he's just not capable of it. Instead, he's governing like Donald Trump. And I think, with this event, he's been really kind of hidden from the public view in a lot of ways. But he's, this event is going to be one of several, instances in which he's like stepping out into the open, I think between now and July 4th, really.
I think it's also worth reflecting on the fact that MAGA is alienating the culture because of MAGA's actual vision for the country, right? Let's remember that the culture started to turn on them pretty rapidly after that kind of brief moment they had, in large part because of the ICE raids, which ended up flooding people's phones for months on end with searing imagery of Trump's paramilitary armies terrorizing immigrants and Americans and shooting people in the head. They threw away their chance to win the culture because they were so hell-bent on not just hurting as many people as possible, but also in service of this kind of vision of a whiter country with 100 million people deported via violent ethnic purges and race war. I'm sorry, I'm pissed about it. What can I tell you?
No, I mean, I think that's right. I think also there's Trump's own bizarre, ideas and his efforts, I think, in this term to make himself a great president, whatever that means. Like the Liberation Day tariffs, right? The insane kidnapping of Maduro and Venezuela, the war in Iran, what the Kennedy Center renaming, right? All of this stuff is this sort of desperate legacy building exercise, right? That is backfiring tremendously. But again, it's what happens when you have an old man with a sort of broken ego running the country.
Trump got annoyed by all these people pulling out of the show, and he tweeted this, quote, "I am thinking about bringing the number one attraction anywhere in the world, the man who gets much larger audiences than Elvis in his prime, the man who some say is the greatest president in history to take the place of these third-rate artists." Close quote. Alex, who's he talking about?
Well, he is talking about himself, and again, like if Colonel Tom Parker had treated Elvis with the respect and that his celebrity deserved, maybe he would have played to even larger crowds. But I digress. I mean, I think that this is the problem here, right? Is that like there's nothing else, and part of it again is if you look ahead, it's hard to look ahead right now. But if you look ahead just a little bit to the future, right? It makes me wonder about Trump's succession plans, kind of, because he can't let anybody else take the spotlight. And so his only answer when there is a sort of problem like this is to just say, like, I will fill it, right? My celebrity. And one, I think that this is more of a risk than he's considering, as is, I think, his plan to attend Game 3 at Madison Square Garden of the NBA Finals, as is, I think, his probable appearance at, at least the World Cup final in July, because people hate him right now, right? Even his own supporters are turning away from him. And, his idea is always to just do the same thing, which is like he's going to go on stage and he's going to ramble for an hour and a half. He's going to read, the snake poem or whatever and talk about Crooked Hillary and, Jerome Powell's mortgage application or whatever is, bothering him at that moment. And, there was a point at which in the very early part of this where there was a kind of thrilling, what will he say or do, like, attitude here. That was 10 years ago or more now.
So, just in response to what Trump tweeted, that crazy thing about him being more popular than Elvis, we saw MAGA figure Matt Walsh tweet something. He said this, quote, "I'm actually pretty pissed at how badly they bungled America 250. First, they tried to invite washed up geriatric one-hit wonders. Then when that didn't work out, they decided to convert the event into a Trump rally where Trump will talk about himself for 90 minutes." Close quote. Alex, Trump's megalomania has gotten so out of control that even MAGA figures can't take it anymore.
Even a fellow megalomaniacs can't take it anymore. I mean, I think that it, like, as with a lot of criticisms with Trump, it sort of begs a question, though, which is just like, well, what was it supposed to be? There is a sober celebration of America's culture, right? You can look, for instance, at things like the kinds of concerts that Barack Obama hosted in the White House throughout his presidency. That were, showcasing a diversity of American music and values, frankly, as well. And like that's not possible here, right? Because everything has to be made from whole cloth, right? Or, to use this sort of ballroom or arch representative, it has to be this very rigid idea of America that's either, perfect classical architecture that it's never really been like a sort of through line in this country, or something that perfectly embodies like the spirit of Trump himself. There's just nothing that exists that fits that bill. And again, we're a year and a half in and gas costs, $5 a gallon everywhere. So, who really wants to participate in that anyways? But I think that this is not somebody this is not an administration that is interested in honoring or celebrating American history or culture to begin with. So why would you expect that to even happen at all?
Right. For them, the only thing that really is worth celebrating is the MAGA adjacent stuff in the culture. And I want to close on that kind of concept because Trump's propagandists are very sensitive to this idea, to this kind of hope that Trump can get penetration into the culture. So during his first term, you might remember that anytime he went to, I don't know, a college football game in Alabama or in a red state or something, and he'd get, enormous cheers, his propagandists would plaster that all over Twitter, trying to show kind of Trump's penetration as this tribune of the people, right? As someone who is very deeply in touch with what's going on with the American bulk or the zeitgeist or whatever. But the thing is, they can't make much headway beyond the Trump adjacent areas of the culture, the MAGA adjacent areas of the culture. Like they consider sporting events to be kind of their part of the culture, but then they deliberately avoid bringing ICE to a Los Angeles baseball game, right? Because they know the fan bases there are heavily Latino and filled with a lot of liberals. So it's almost like they run up against a wall when they try to get outside of the MAGA adjacent areas of the culture. You know what I mean? I think this speaks to like a robustness in the culture, its diversity that they can't kind of steamroll. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of it too is that so much of that is also limited to the like celebrity and charisma of Donald Trump, right? That I think that he does, which I think is fairly resilient, right? That he does still represent and can still go to some places and get this kind of response as a metaphor for a kind of, pugilistic and nativist kind of American politics. But like, people, when they see that politics in action outside of Donald Trump, right, they recoil, right? The movement, that this sort of MAGA movement is limited to Donald Trump, right? It doesn't have extensions in the culture really beyond like kind of a foothold in the UFC, right? It doesn't have even like extensions in American politics. Like he will be succeeded probably by Marco Rubio or JD Vance, but they will never have the kind of adulation or like cultural resonance that he does. And so you're left with this kind of empty vessel, right? Which is this soon to be 80-year-old guy standing up and delivering a like 90-minute speech in place of CNC Music Factory and, Vanilla Ice, right? Like, and those are your kind of options. And I think that, in some ways, like if you're if you're looking for something to be hopeful about, it's that, right? It's that there has not been this kind of cultural resonance. And again, like with this concert, with probably Trump's appearance at Madison Square Garden on Monday, with probably Trump's appearance at least a, US men's national team game or several World Cup games, right? There's going to be a real example of just what the American people think of him, and it's not going to be pretty.
I think that's exactly right. I think what you're really getting at there is that at the core of MAGA is this bizarre kind of howling emptiness. There's just nothing really there except for Trump's megalomania and his self-enrichment and his absolutely bottomless need for attention and adulation, and he never gets enough anyway. Alex Shepard, always great to talk to you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.